Candace, did you get, Candace, did you get rained out last Thursday night?
Excuse me?
Did you get rained out Thursday night?
Yeah.
Again?
We will this Thursday, probably too.
I didn't hear you.
Yes, and we will probably get rained out this Thursday too.
Ah,
Oh, could you bring the banner to town manager so I can put it on the polls?
the other one that you gave me.
Right.
Okay. What do you need it?
Yep. We have 2 polls that need banners, and you have one of them.
So is everybody all set? 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody to the August 16th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We'll start with our usual call to order. Candace, please.
Candace Bouchard?
Todd Shalashi.
Josh Kelly.
Andy Perez.
Sheila Sedlak.
Jack Ford. Stephen Sedlak.
Linda Bravo.
Thank you. Next is please join me for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anything under agenda review?
Are we going to add in the special meeting minutes
They're there.
underneath the approval of minutes?
Okay, yeah, we could do that.
4AB?
Yeah, 4B. So is a motion to add the minutes of our special meeting on the agenda? Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Anything else? 1 second. I'm just checking one thing. We'd also like to take a minute while we're here to recognize the firefighter that lost his life in New Hartford. And our condolences out to obviously the family, all his friends, as well as the Burlington Fire Department. And also, send some of our thoughts out to New Hartford for the rebuild in their main downtown area. We also appreciate as everybody's probably read, is our firefighters and our ladder trucks and our tankers and all the other equipment that went down to help our neighbors. We're very lucky to have the people that responded, as are they. So I just want to make sure we, recognize that for Colin's family. So approval of minutes of our regular meeting on August 2nd. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Todd. Any discussion of the regular minutes? Yes?
Just a small typo. Page 2, item 9C, line 2. I think there's a couple letters left out. It's watercraft.
Okay, I will go back
Okay.
and check that.
Just line 2.
Line 2, item 9C.
If nothing else, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Abstain?
Abstain? Yeah, this will abstain on that. And now we have the minutes of our special meeting. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Any corrections for that? Thank you to Steve for taking those minutes. Hearing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next up, citizens' comments. John?
Yes, John Weird, 16th Superior Street, Winchester today. Been looking around on the internet, and I now find that both Chevrolet and Jeep, they are using Electrify America for 3 years of free charging, and they are basically on the interstate only. They might be at the end of it, but mostly they're in the bigger interstates. talk to them and see what their angle is, and maybe team up. Right now, there's about 6 people that do charging, EVgo, Electrify, Charge Point, and now, and start picking one or the other, maybe have a couple of them in town, and maybe work out a good rate for charging. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay, next up is the town manager report, Josh.
You've got it. Good evening, everybody. As usual, I have a long list of the various actions, the various meetings, tasks that I attended to over the past couple of weeks. I will give you just a few highlights verbally now, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Union negotiations are continuing along. We have a session this coming Wednesday for the Clerical Union and Supervisors Union. Discussions have been happening with members of the union to try and clarify a couple of practices that are currently in place to make sure that we're in the best position possible when we return to our next negotiating session. We have requested at this point in time 5 interns from the community college. The community college, after I spoke with President Michael Rook, he connected me with Susan Dichter, who over there is overseeing their internship program. They have a few different internship programs, but the one that we'll be working with specifically is funded by the Department of Labor. So these are paid interns, but they are not paid on the town's dollar, which is a very positive scenario for us. And we have an opportunity right now to get as many as 5. We have 2 different internships that we've identified areas of need in the Department of Public Works, 2 in Town Hall and 1 in the Senior Center. So I'm optimistic about that, and we'll hear back in the next couple of weeks about placements. We may not get 5, but we have a capacity to have up to 5. Some new hires were made. We had just this past Wednesday our new grants manager and budget analyst, Allison Pierce, begin work. And we have full-time, the enforcement officer was hired on, Michael Stankoff. So those are moving along, and Sheila and I will continue to work away at hiring on an assistant town clerk. We have many applicants. The process has reached that point in time where we've collected the applicants, and we'll begin evaluation very soon. Landscaping, for those of you who haven't seen out on Main Street, is underway, and I'm happy to say that the center islands will be landscaped over the course of Wednesday and Thursday. 508 Main Street, we had a committee meeting in the past couple of weeks where that was a very positive, very productive conversation where we identified some possible uses. Some of those uses are would be able to make use of the buildings as is. Some of them required a lot of, would require, I should say, a lot of different construction, addition, subtraction to the building that's there. But all in all, the committee is feeling that it would be worthwhile to see if there are any developers who are interested in acquiring the property as is and making use of what is currently present, or possibly an addition onto what is currently present, but without tearing the building down, the historic facade. So that was the most recent conversation that was held on that item. The Fireman's Carnival, I do want to highlight for all of you that it is being held not this coming weekend, but the following. That's the weekend of August 28th. You have all been invited, and I believe it was included in your last packets, an invitation to be present at the bandstand for the parade. If you don't have that invitation or you need another copy, please let me know and I can email it along. We have completed noise and blight ordinance review, and that is on the table for tonight's discussion, so we'll discuss that in just a little bit. Candy and I, just this past Friday, had the opportunity to meet Rob Phillips from the Northwest Hills Council of Governments. I've had the opportunity to be on many calls with him at this point in time, but not actually meet him in person, since the COG meetings are still happening remotely. So it was nice to put a physical person to the name and the voice online, and it seems like he has some good ideas for moving the COG forward. The ordinance review, this is the last thing I'll touch on before I see if there are any questions. the ordinance review that was conducted by General Code. At this point in time, all of those different ordinances have been reviewed by department directors. They've all been submitted back to me, and now over the next month, it's my target by September, I think 14th is the date I set for myself. I will go through and compile all that information, make sure that I don't have any disagreements with the way that the department directors recommended we move. And then those recommendations will, as a next step after my review, will be coming here to the board. So we'll coordinate that as we move forward. And but I'm excited to say that we're still on track as far as timing goes. Are there any questions that I can answer for you? Yes.
The 5 interns, will the 2 at the town hall, would any of the interns be available to any of the boards and commissions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Especially depending on what the work is that you're looking to have them do. One of the interns, and these are just primary responsibilities, so certainly all of these interns, the main focus is to make sure that there's an educational component to the work that they would be conducting here in town hall. So they're hopefully learning a lot on the job, and we're trying to make it an enriching experience. One of them is going to be primarily focused on communications, helping us to further a communications plan, helping us to make sure that we're active, sustainable on social media, that we're expanding to the greatest extent possible, a town newsletter, things like that. And the other is going to be focused on the land use office and trying to help continue to revitalize the Conservation Commission, Energy Commission, and focus on sustainable CT certification. So certainly if anything aligns with one of those, that's very easy. If something's a little bit out of the way, I'm sure we can sell it as a great educational opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
Josh, regarding the interns, what kind of hours are you looking at per week?
It varies. A couple of the internships would just be 5 hours a week, and they asked us if we were going to put multiples forward because there are some students who are approved to go up to 15 hours a week, and there are other students who don't have the time to take 15 hours a week. We gave them a variety of options. So for example, the intern at the senior center who would be helping with their technology program, working one-on-one with seniors to make sure that they have the skills and the know-how to be able to access Zoom, to be able to do anything that they might want to do online. That's just a 5 hour a week position. They go in for a few hours, a couple hours every day, perhaps, or at least a few times a week. And that's the internship. For the 2 in town hall, those are 15-hour internships that we've offered out per week. And they are being paid just above minimum wage by, again, the Department of Labor. That's not on the town's dollar.
Would you say their pay is through the Department of Labor?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell me when the hardware is going to be going on the new poles?
It's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will get that and I can follow up with you
Yeah,
personally.
so Public Works has the hardware for one pole,
Okay,
and then Mark would have to order for the other pole.
okay.
Thanks.
Josh, are there job descriptions for both the budget analyst and the blight officer?
Yes, there are,
Could you share a copy with the selectmen at some point?
of course.
Yep.
Yep.
Anything else? Well, he'll stay here for the rest of the meeting, so if we have a question, I'm sure he'll be able to bring it up. Now we have our finance director's report. Bruce?
Good evening. I have just a very brief report. I'm just back from a couple weeks vacation. But I would like to give you a report on tax collections for the month of July. It is our first installment of 2 installments, and so we collected $11,800,000 in the month of July, which represents 49% of the budget, and that is certainly satisfactory, what we would expect. Last year, we collected 11.5 million, about 300,000 less, and that represented 48% of the budget. So, again, I'd like to thank all the taxpayers for their timely payments. It certainly helps with the cash flow for the general fund operations. The rest of revenues for the month, tracked what we would, as expected. Total revenues ended up at 12 million, just over $12 million compared to 11.7 million last year at this time. Our total expenditures are, again, it's just the beginning of the fiscal year, and we had $2.4 million in expenditures for the month compared to 2.7 million last year at this time. Again, that represents 7% of the budget, so for 1/12 of the year, that's about what we would expect. So we have started the audit. The auditors were in July for a week to do a lot of examination of transactional documents, and they will be back in September, to wrap up. So we're on target for that. Happy to take any questions.
Anyone?
Are we close to closing out the budget, last year's budget?
So we will finalize the results for fiscal '21 in September. We have to wait for invoices to come through, and we also, accounting principles, government accounting principles require us to look at the first 2 months of the next fiscal year in terms to identify which revenues came in during these months that relate to the prior year, and that adjusts our total revenues for fiscal '21. So we have to wait until August 31st for that.
A couple of months before you can do that.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome.
On to correspondence. Does anybody have any they wanted to highlight? If not, Steve, boards and commissions.
Okay, we have appointments this evening. Starting with Conservation Commission, I would move to appoint Renata Renee Waldron as a member of the Conservation Commission, a permanent member, term to expire May of 2025.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Okay, and also we have, I would move to appoint Gary Paginelli to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, permanent member, term to expire in May of 2025.
There's a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. All in favor? Thank you, unanimous.
And I would move to appoint Felix Vine as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission to an alternate position, term to expire in October of 2026.
Second.
Thank you, Candace. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And we have one reappointment. I would move to reappoint Norman Kelly as a member of the Retirement Administration Board, a permanent member, term to expire in July of 2025.
Thank you, Linda. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
That's it for now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to 10A, new business refunds as recommended by the building department. This is similar to our tax refunds when something needs to get turned back. So Josh, just a quick,
Yes, sorry,
$160 planning and zoning. Y'all had it in the packets.
Overpayment.
yes, that's correct. The background for this particular case can be seen throughout the 2 emails that follow the action request that you see here. There was a special permit application that had gone through. There was a fee of $160. The proper venue was the Zoning Board of Appeals, which unfortunately has an application fee of $410. And through this process, as the Planning and Zoning Commission application is withdrawn, he's seeking a reimbursement of the fee for the $160 special application that he had put forward to that commission.
They have a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you, Candace. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions about it? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next up is the anti-blight ordinance changes. Josh, you want to do that one?
Absolutely. So, in your packet, you will see that there are, again, I believe, 2 different copies of the anti-blight ordinance, as you'll find it. One is the original anti-blight ordinance, and actually that comes last, I suppose. My apologies. I thought that that was included here in the packet for you, but unfortunately, we have one copy. That is the revised copy of the anti-blight ordinance. But let me tell you a little bit about what's changed from this current draft in front of you, as it changed from the draft that has currently been adopted by the Board of Selectmen. So, there are 2 main changes. The first is that at the moment, right now, in Winchester, the building official is designated to be the blight officer. There is no way that that can be changed except by a change of this ordinance. The ordinance that has been written by our town attorney, Kevin Nelligan, which is in front of you right now, allows the blight official to be designated by myself to enforce this ordinance, which, as we know and as we've been discussing, the enforcement officer would be covering not just blight, but also inland wetlands and zoning. So this would allow this new position to really become full-fledged with the intent that Bob had originally kicked off for that position. The second thing that this updated anti-blight ordinance would do is require an additional notice be sent out by the blight officer before liens begin being placed on a property. It's not something, obviously, that strictly needs to be done as part of a blight process. We've been operating with our current ordinance for a long time, as you all know. But this change would bring our ordinance in compliance and in line with other ordinances around the state that have been taken to the state Supreme Court and have won, and that have been upheld by the state Supreme Court. So this really is a protection for the town. It's to make sure that we are doing as much as we can to educate and to inform people about blight and about the fact that it's not acceptable before we go ahead and make any financial liens against their property. And other various textual changes have been made to the ordinance as it stands that, once again, bring it more in line with ordinances that have stood up to the test of the state Supreme Court. Those incidental verbal changes, textual changes are so numerous that we were not sent a redlined copy. If you go through line by line, you'll find that most words have been changed. Most of the page would be covered in red. But this has been actually written by our town attorney. He very much is of the opinion that we should not have any more properties listed under our blight ordinance until a new ordinance is adopted. And it's his recommendation and mine that we move this forward in the ordinance adoption process so that we can have it further reviewed after a 2-week waiting period and possibly consider adoption after that.
Okay, so on our amending or changing ordinances, the first step would have been that we need to change the ordinance, which we've heard about in the past, and our town attorney reviews it. So he did write this and has been reviewing it. So we are in step 2 for this, which means that we would give notice on our town's website for 2 weeks with a notice of intent that this ordinance is going to be changed. So that's where we would be on here. So if you would, if you'd like to move it to that, we can. If you wanted more answers before we take that step, we can do that too.
I'm all set to move it forward, but on the enforcement section, of the old ordinance, it was a very formal way to report blight. It was a certified letter sent to certain people with a copy to the town clerk. This is just a file, just to notify in writing. And I guess over the past few years, I've noted that just a lot of blighted properties there's nothing formal. It's all sent to the building department and then actions taken on this. Is this what's going to happen? Will the enforcement officer check properties and himself report them as blight? Or would it be up to citizens to report properties as blight?
You're right. The practice at the moment is that it must be reported by somebody other than the blight officer themselves. That's certainly something that I'm willing to explore. It's not something that's been done in the past where the blight officer is going out and being proactive, his or herself, about finding and recording that blight. Obviously, there's enough blight in the community that it would be easy for somebody to go and observe these things themselves and to put them down into writing and document the violations. Other things that have been done in the past is instead of having the blight officer go out and record these, and the reason it's done, just to clarify, the reason that the blight officer themselves has not in the past put any of this, documented any blight without another complaint coming in, is to make sure that there is not a level of bias, not a level of skewed subjectivity to the process that would allow it to be thrown out in court. So making sure that it's somebody else that has brought it forward, whether it be another member of the town staff or whether it be a member of the public, gives the blight officer a level of cover to make sure that it's not their own subjective opinion, it's at least a multiple opinions that have come forward to agree with it.
We never see any of these reports. They're reported in here, you report them, you have meetings. The board never sees any of these reports. Do people send in complaints and do letters come in frequently?
Yes, they do, especially emails. We get attachments with emails with pictures taken from the street. We get phone calls. People even stop in sometimes with hard photographs. I actually just had one a couple weeks ago. And they're all being documented. They're all being saved, forwarded, and there is certainly a paper trail because a lot of these items do end up in court, whether it's about the blight itself or whether it's because of a foreclosure. No matter what, if this property is going to be taken into the legal system, we want to make sure that the liens that we're putting on a property or any corrective action that we're asking them to take is very well documented. So if there's anything that you're looking to see, we can certainly figure out a way to best share that with the board.
Well, I would not really want it shared with the board at this level, because I think there's some issues, I think, with people, sending things in, or the person whose house it is themselves. I don't think we want to share all that information out in public at the moment.
Oh, no, that's not what I was asking. I was just looking for the process, and you do have meetings, but we've never been privy to any of the properties that you discussed.
That's correct. To this point in time, that's a correct statement. Yep.
On page 6 of 7 in the, it's under remediation, what is it, that paragraph sign and an E mean? It appears twice, number 2. What does that mean?
That means subsection E, so that is referring to,
Oh, I see.
yeah, earlier in the document.
Okay,
E is enforcement.
okay.
There you go. It's alphabetized.
So this is only about the ordinance, and are we creating another ordinance after this about what we do with the properties afterwards?
We don't have a plan in place right now for an ordinance to identify what's done with the properties thereafter. I am working right now with the land use office to try and come up with a set of proposals for all of you to consider with the properties that we currently hold. I don't think that requires necessarily an ordinance unless you would like to see something a little bit more concrete and set in stone. But that's certainly a conversation we can have.
But an ordinance already covers it, sale of town-owned property. We already have the ordinance to cover the disposal, sale of, release of town-owned property. So we would more need like, what were all these properties going to do? Are we gonna release them? Are we gonna hold them?
Right,
And
intent.
I don't think that's an ordinance, that's more a
Policy.
policy proposal.
Well, that's more what I meant, yeah.
Okay.
And how does it go before planning and zoning? It doesn't skip planning and zoning.
But we'd have to rewrite the other ordinance.
Maybe I missed it on a quick read, but is there anything in here that addresses trash barrels being left on the curb most of the week? I don't know if that's considered blight or not, but it's unsightly at least.
Absolutely. My understanding is that there's another ordinance that covers how long trash cans can be left outside. It might actually be within the zoning regulations, if not the ordinances. But I'll get that information for you.
Thank you.
We were just talking about that last week.
Josh, on page 5 of 7, penalties, is that $99 a day the same as before, or has that been changed?
Yes, it is
That is
the same as
exactly the same.
before. Yes.
And that's a per day,
That's right. So each additional day constitutes an additional violation with a $99 fine that's being imposed. As per the charter, only $100 worth of penalty can be applied to
Kevin
one
recommended
violation.
keeping it at that.
Yes, he did.
Isn't that tied to the state levels? I
There-
thought that number
there-
was tied to state numbers in terms of how high it could be.
The state just amended recently.
Oh, the
how
state
high-
just went up to 250, right?
Right, that's right.
Right, so that number could go up to 250 if we so choose. But right now, it's still at 99, which was the state limit.
Yep.
Well, I'll take a motion here to move the selectmen approve noticing of amendment to ordinance section 180. I'll second that.
Any other discussion? So if we approve this, what it's gonna do is this ordinance has to go on the website. And it has to, down at the bottom on the website, where it says legal notices, it should go there. And also on the page of ordinances, I believe there's a heading for changes up there too.
Okay.
And then we'll be voting on it again in September.
Yes. Next steps.
Make it official.
It takes like 3 meetings to get through it, so.
Excuse me?
It usually takes 3 meetings
Right.
to make the ordinance in force. So people have a good opportunity, if they wanted to talk about an ordinance, to come and talk about it or give some feedback to the town manager. That's why it takes long to get through the process. So there's input availability along the way. So everybody is ready? All in favor? Okay, thank you. Unanimous. So up comes another ordinance. This is the noise regulation, and we've heard about this one before. So this would also be on step 2 because this is already, this has gone to Kevin as well, correct, Josh?
That's correct.
So you want to take the rest of it?
Absolutely. So in this case, I do apologize that we were missing the other copy for the blight ordinance. Now, on the noise regulation, which is section 195, you have one document, it's 3 pages long, that was included in your packet, and then you have one document that was shared with you more recently, which is why it wasn't included in your packet. That has been printed out and put at your space here at the desk. So what's included in your packet is the original noise ordinance, and there are a few different issues that come about with this, a few different components of it that brought about a recommended change to you tonight. First is the fact that in order for any noise ordinance to be enforceable under state law, it has to be reviewed by the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Commissioner, and it has to be approved by that individual. And our noise regulation never went through that review process, nor was ever approved. So therefore, any police officer in town who went to give out such a ticket would be able to have that ticket brought to court, and it would be thrown out. Because from their perspective, the law has not been well and truly adopted. So beyond that, I feel that there is a very specific kind of way that we would like to go about being objective rather than subjective, and that is by making sure that we have sound measuring devices, and that we can really record the number of decibels that are being created at any one point in time. So what the new proposed noise ordinance does is it identifies for each different zone that we have in town, how much noise could and should be produced before it constitutes a violation. And it also addresses issues that arise when there are two different zones next to each other. And it gives us and our police officers some cover by having a very objective way to measure sound output, which our current ordinance, I should say, does not. This ordinance is very much based on the noise ordinance that was adopted by the town of Woodbridge. And it's something that has been upheld in court. I worked very closely with Kevin Nelligan and Chief Fitzgerald in writing this ordinance. The reason that it came to you only today is because that's when Kevin made his final adjustments and gave his blessing to the text as it appears. It's difficult to identify what exactly constitutes an industrial zone, a commercial zone, and a residential zone, which is what the town of Woodbridge did in terms of creating their noise ordinance and figuring out what kinds of noises can be created and emitted in what areas. So we have divvied up the various zones that we have here in town into the closest possible category and recreated a similar structure, which can be seen on the third page of the ordinance as you flip through it. That's the big table that you see. So are there any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, this table,
Yep.
is it the same across the top and down the side?
It is.
So do we need both?
So the table is created so that you can see, for example, when an emitter is putting out sound in the Highland Lake Business District, just for example, and immediately next door at night, there is a rural residential parcel. Only 45 decibels would be able to be emitted because you can track that through this table by going from left to right and then from top to bottom to find that in particular. But that would change depending on if it's the daytime. That would change if
No, but I mean, just, so on the left column, it's where the person making the noise is located?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
in the next 4 columns, it's where the person's,
Where the noise
is
complaint is coming
coming
from.
from.
That's right.
so it doesn't really,
So this allows us to have more noise being emitted, for example, from a production and innovation lot to another production and innovation lot. That allows for industrial use to create noise in and of itself and to be more noisy in such a zone. But it wouldn't allow for a production and innovation lot that is immediately adjacent to rural residential to create the same level of noise.
I get it.
Yep. So these decibel levels are fairly universal. I researched about over 24 different towns to make sure that we had numbers in here that make sense, that are tried and true, and that are fair from the perspective of our industrial businesses in town to our commercial uses, that are reasonable, and that can also, of course, be enforced and are fair on the part of those who are trying to deal with the noise that might be surrounding their house. Now, there are, of course, grandfather provisions. If there is, for example, I know, just because I happen to live on Meadow Street, I know that there is a industrial, there's a parcel that's used for industrial purposes that exists in a different zone, and is adjacent to a different zone. There are grandfather provisions here that would allow them to continue their operations. It would not force anybody to cease their operations or to amend them, as long as they have been active and continuing up and through the point in time that this ordinance would be adopted.
So which is the revised version, the draft?
The revised is the draft, yes.
So is that gonna have at the bottom of it the same notation that the ordinance for section 180 has, where it has a section, the name of the ordinance the revision date and the page numbers?
We certainly can. That's no problem. I can get that added. These documents were originally drafted by two different individuals, and
Right,
that's
right.
why
And
the
I
difference.
just think if we're putting them up on the website, they have to be identical
Of course.
in terms of getting rid of the word draft and then have the same revision date and pagination and section number at the bottom,
Got it.
please.
Josh, would you walk me through this? On the enforcement, it is strictly up to the police department, so if I'm hearing noise, no matter where I am, the call first goes to the police department. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we can
And
do.
then the instrumentation is going to remain within the police department?
That's right, yes.
Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's a weekday or weekend day, all complaints go directly to the police department?
That's right, and if there's anybody who complains to town hall, we can refer them to the correct person.
Okay, and then it's up to the police department at that point to assign an officer to go out with the device to measure the noise?
That's right.
At that particular point?
That's right, and they'll be investing in, and they're fairly cheap, the instruments that measure the noise.
All right, and there's no particular warning ahead of time?
No notice has to be given, because this ordinance is in effect 24/7, even noting back on the table, as it appears, that there are daytime hours and there are nighttime hours. So even during the day, there are limits that can't be exceeded for a prolonged period of time under the new noise ordinance.
Okay, and once the police department then does the testing and they reach a level that's higher than expected, what's the immediate action? Are they then going to that location?
Yes, so they would approach the emitter or the property owner at the site of the emission, depending on what the cause of the noise is. It could be somebody, I can imagine somebody with their windows rolled down blasting a radio in a car, or it could be something coming from within an industrial building that's excessively loud. So no matter the case, they would be approaching whoever's responsible for the emission of the noise, informing them that they are above that limit, hopefully providing some level of public education if this isn't a repeat offense, and making sure that they understand that they have to keep it down, maybe even help them test what does 60 decibels sound like, what does 55 decibels sound like, to help them better understand. If they refuse, obviously, that is a violation and it would result in a ticket, and if it's a repeat violation or it immediately resumes, then there's a violation constituted there.
Have we such an instrument to do this now?
I do not believe that we have.
You know the
any.
cost of what that instrument will be?
I was told by the chief of police that each one is under $200. He would want to invest in 3.
And how many are we going to invest in?
3.
Hey, my watch does it right now.
There you go.
The new watches do it. Just FYI, that's how people are gonna measure them,
How much does your watch cost?
and more than that.
Just curious.
But the watch does other health things.
Right.
It's part of the health package thing.
So saving your ears at a wild concert.
Yeah, I made a mistake in going to one, but I kept looking at my watch and the decibels on it, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here, I can't hear already.
Or cutting the
You know,
lawn.
part of the discussion on this emerged because of the lake, right?
What?
Most of the discussion on a noise ordinance emerged because of the activity at the lake,
No, it
especially.
did not.
No, it
did
didn't.
not.
No, it did
Did
not.
not?
Actually, it
It
occurred.
emerged from High Street.
Yes, it was primarily brought up as a result of actions and instances
Long
within
time.
town center.
Okay.
Not here, not at them.
All right.
One thing I don't know if we need to add, I talked to Josh a little bit earlier, on the exclusions page, I do not see anything for generators in the event of power outages that occasionally happen here.
So annoying.
I like how you use that word occasion.
Do we need to add one for generators as long as they're adequately muffled to prevent loud noises?
I think
such
it's
as-
a good idea maybe during F, in F,
There is.
to go with the
It's
lawn.
survival.
There is an exclusion.
Well, that says emergency generators, and personal generators does not necessarily fall into the category of emergency.
Right, there's a specific definition for emergency that's listed on the first page, and it reads, any occurrence involving actual or imminent danger to persons or damage to property which demands immediate action. And I could see somebody, of course, challenging the ordinance, saying that the use of a person, you know, their life and limb is not in danger, so why are they using a very loud personal generator? So I would propose amending E, unless there was a different proposal. Instead of reading it as is, it would read, noise created as a result of an emergency, including but not limited to the use of personal and commercial generators. And that would, while not changing the definition of an emergency, it would signify that personal and commercial generators are explicitly allowed in the event of, you know, any such event. But perhaps we need to change, of course, the definition of emergency too.
Would commercial then only be allowed to be used in no, that would be if they had to bring a piece of equipment onto someone's property and need to use that too. I was thinking an industrial zone, no.
Yeah, I think like during emergencies, we all are okay with generators,
It's
people
survival.
running them. I
Oxygen.
think if somebody next door to me wanted to run the generator all day today or yesterday, I think I'd be upset.
About the old
If it's,
gun.
you know, if the ice storm is going on and we have no electricity, I don't think anybody should get upset.
And I'm okay putting a provision in there so they're adequately muffled,
Yeah.
like the lawn care maintenance equipment.
We can still make changes after we post it for the 2 weeks. We can still update changes. Because that's the point of the 2 weeks, is to have people weigh in on it, and then we can still make additional changes. Anything else? Do we want to move this ahead, or do we want any other notes for Josh to go back with first? It's up to everybody. This is as a request of the chief. The chief, like the other ordinance, just wants to make it so that it's workable, so that they can do their job in the best manner possible with clarity. And so that's why he's requested these changes.
I'll move it.
Okay,
I'll second it.
great. All in favor?
What we're moving is the approval of noticing it.
Yes.
Not accepting it, but noticing it.
Yes, for
With-
2 weeks on the
With the
website.
amendments on the,
On the website, those 2 places we just talked about. Excellent. And Kurt will write about it too, so. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Item D is a request for a letter of support for the Winchester Land Trust. They are trying to get a grant to help protect some land that's contiguous with what is already protected. And Josh, do you have, I know that you got more information too.
I don't have too much more to share with all of you. We received a message from Jen Perga, president of the Winchester Land Trust. As Candy described, they are trying to purchase a 60-acre parcel that abuts both water company land and land trust land. And it's their hope that this group would be willing to move to either have myself or to have Candy write and author a letter of support on behalf of the town in support of this purchase.
So it's in support of them getting the grant to purchase it.
That's right, yes. In support of the process.
Right, because they apply for grants, and the grant people like to see letters of support from towns and other various entities.
I would make that motion.
Linda seconds. Any other questions?
I don't see why we're going to move this forward if we don't have an address. I really don't understand why we don't get the complete details or a map stating where this property is.
Whenever, certainly that's something we can discuss more in executive session, whenever it comes to the acquisition of land. I know that there are concerns about trying to make it public. Perhaps this is a deal that's trying to be made behind closed doors with a specific parcel. They don't want to see the cost of the land possibly rise as a result of publicity from it. That's one possibility. And I also know that likely does not have an address. It is likely a parcel number that we certainly could pull up on a screen if you'd like to hover around and take a look. But I don't believe there's actually an address attached to this parcel.
Yeah, Candace, like you, I would like to see a little bit of a map with a request to something. Even the letter of request is fine, but whereabouts, where does it touch the water company's land? Just having a map with this would be very useful in a presentation like this. I know we're gonna see it eventually, but at this juncture, it would have been nice to have.
I don't know where it is exactly, but we can find it right now. It's also too, it's part of the wildlife corridor, and they had a wildlife biologist, has a detailed list of species inhabiting that land. And I'm sure we can get the information. As a matter of fact, on our website, if we go to Tax Assessor Maps, just have to figure out which map it is.
Who's it owned by now? Does it say?
Town.
What?
I assume it's owned by the town,
No,
right?
it's owned by a private individual.
Private.
Oh,
It's a private individual, it's not the town.
It just abuts the
I
town,
got my eyes
and they're
on it, I
trying
can't
to
even see.
buy it from that private individual.
So here is Highland and where's Crystal? My eyes are not that good.
So Crystal's right here.
Look, on here. Winchester Club Pond.
Yep.
Sucker Brook. Hurlburt Pond, Sucker Brook Dam.
There's Crystal.
Crystal Lake. So it butts, where does it abut? I'm going with 21.
Candy, I don't need to see it now. My comment was I don't have any difficulty with this, it's just how it was presented to us without a backup of some kind of land mass, so I could see, oh, that's where it is, okay.
So
Don't
do you
need
want to
that,
hold until the next
So
time?
whatever
or-
you're looking at, we can't all see, so
I would pass it around, Jeff.
when it comes back next time, that's fine.
Well, it's not gonna come back. If you wanna hold it and table it, we'd have to table
I
it.
move that we table it for further information.
So our next meeting,
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. And then we have the map.
All you need is just L whatever. There's
yeah.
a number.
I'm honestly not sure. I do believe I found the parcel.
Not opposed to it, I'd just like to know where it is, that's all.
I would support the motion to table, seeing it on a map is a good idea.
Okay, all in favor of tabling? Opposed? 4 to 2.
So it's Candace and you opposed?
Yep. Todd.
You and
Todd,
Todd.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is citizens' comments.
Yeah, on the couplers for like generators and stuff, I mean, normally that would not be a problem because they would fall within their guidelines for the manufacturer. But if somebody had a defective one, that could really put a strain. That would about double your number of decibels.
Yeah.
So I would look at how you write that up. Because if you just put
Okay, the next item is item 12, Selectmen's comments and reports. I just want to let you know that Susan B. Anthony always sends us a thank you letter when they receive our money that we give to them as part of our, like, per capita, each town that gives money for the operations of Susan B. Anthony in Torrington. And I just got another letter from them that thanked us, so I just thought I'd let you all know. Anyone else?
I did read that our population dropped 9%, huh?
Yes, it's
In
mostly
the most
children.
recent, from 11,002 to 10,002.
And 629, 629 was kids. 300-something adults, 600-something kids. And kids have declined. There was just another article in the paper today. Kids all over the state declined. Litchfield County declined by 2.5% overall. But this is all in line with, if you look at what the Board of Education enrollment numbers have been over the past 15 years, it's, pretty, those numbers held true in the census. If you look at the COG and others have done the story about the graying of Northwest Connecticut. A lot of people they stay, but kids have grown up, got their own houses or have moved on. So like I said to the paper, the interesting question is how many second homes are here, because they don't get counted in the census. And so if we had when the second home data comes out, that would be interesting too, to see what happens with our population and whatnot. Because as somebody said in that grain of Connecticut, the grain of the Northwest Corner report, is eventually somebody's got to buy our houses, right? Somebody's got to fill up the land that, people have already built on, and who are you going to sell to? So you want a healthy population over a good span of people so that there's always, it rejuvenating itself.
Well, it's very interesting in the play, the 250 play, we're looking at population figures over the last 100 years. They don't fluctuate a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's about 1,000 here, 1,000 there,
Yep.
pretty consistent.
Yep. Land of steady habits.
So Thursday, we have Friends of Main Street Summer Contrast. It's the West Hill Groove Band from New Hartford, so hopefully it won't rain this Thursday.
I think actually you got to pick a different day of the week.
No. It doesn't matter. Like, it didn't rain, and then it did all of a sudden last Thursday, and it was fine after that, but the musicians' equipment was wet, so they were afraid of plugging in, so.
Anything else from anyone? If not, Steve?
I move we adjourn.
Second. Thank you,
Second.
Candace. All in favor? Unanimous. Thanks.